Hey, what's up, guys? We are going to be doing lesson 8.2 over ratios, rates, tables, and graphs. And our TEKS for this unit are going to be 6.5a and 6.1d. We will make sure that we will discuss those with you tomorrow in class. But before I start this video, I want to give a special shout out to all the band and choir students that performed the last couple nights. You guys did absolutely awesome, so you should be proud of yourselves. So keep up the good work, and just shows that hard work does pay off. If you don't already have so, go ahead and get a piece of notebook paper out. So go ahead and pause the video and get that out, and we will start the video in just a few seconds. Alright, so we're going to be doing 3 problems today. 3. And with those different problems, it's all going to kind of tie together like the activity that we did in class today, so that you guys see that graphs and tables do kind of tie together. So I will pause the video quite a few times just to let me go ahead and draw the graph, and then I'll show you guys what it's going to have on there, and we'll go from there. Alright, so question number 1 says Mr. Nelson spends $4 on 12 pieces of candy. So what I want to do is talk about the different amounts that he could have spent. You know, how much it might have cost him for 1 piece of candy, or maybe for 2 or 3, and all that good stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and add a little bit to my table, and then when it comes back, there's going to be a few holes that we'll discuss, and I'll explain how to fill those in. Alright guys, so I want you to at least have this much of the graph done. So go ahead and pause the video and copy this part of the graph down, and when you're ready, we will work through this part. Alright, so this goes back to our additive and multiplicative rules. Remember that when we are multiplying to find our total, that means that we are using a multiplicative strategy, and when we are adding, we're going to be using additive. So the information from the question that it gave us said that Mr. Nelson spent $4 on 12 pieces of candy. What I want to know is, if I had $3, how many pieces of candy could I get? Or how many pieces of candy, if I got 8 pieces of candy, how much did I spend? So that's what we're going to look at today. So if I'm going from $4 to 12, I could either add 8 to it, which would be additive, or I could multiply it by 3, which would be multiplicative. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and say that 4 times 3 would give me 12. And so my rule would be to multiply that number by 3. That should make sense. That's what we've done the last 2 days. Then if I look over here, if I know that my rule is multiplicative, and I'm just going to go ahead and tell you guys that, that's what we're going to use today. If I multiply 3 times 3, it's going to give me 9 pieces of candy. So I've also multiplied by 3. And now if we come over to this first one, since we still have our money, we can multiply our $1 times 3, because that's what our rule is over here. And we would find out, times 3, that we would be able to have 3 pieces of candy. But now I've got this one blank left over here. So if we were multiplying to go from money to pieces, in order to do it backwards, we would do the opposite of multiplying. And so I hope that you guys know that the opposite of multiplying is dividing. So if I decided to divide, what I would do is I would take, alright, sorry guys, this number was an 8. It really needs to be a 6. I was wondering why this math was not working out. So that's what it is. So if I take my 6 pieces, hopefully everybody sees that, change this box to a 6, not an 8. If we take this 6, our total pieces, and divide it by 3, because we're doing the opposite, we're going to get $2, which would show us that for $2 we could get 6 pieces of candy. And then if you did it backwards to check, $2 times 6, I'm sorry, $2 times 3 would give you 6 pieces of candy. So that rule stays the same. I just wanted to give you guys an example of what to do if it was working backwards. Alright, so there's question number 1. We just built a table. And now we're going to move on to question 2. So go ahead and give me a second to write this down, and then I'll put it back up when I'm ready for you to copy. Alright guys, so I've just made an outline of a graph. We've got some tables set up and a question down here. And the question says, Mrs. Sorrells makes cookies. For every 3 chocolate chips, she can make 2 cookies. Alright, so go ahead and pause the video and make sure you've got the graph set up and that table, and we will go over it in just a second. Alright, so I've graphed 2 points. It said for every 3 chocolate chips, we can have 2 cookies. And then I just know that if I multiplied those both by 2, I would have 6 chocolate chips, which would give me 4 cookies. What I want to do is I want to go ahead and extend this a little bit. Sorry, I know that's messing up some of you guys, but just to get a couple more data points. So let's go ahead and put 7, 8, 9, and then we'll leave it at 9. So if I multiplied 3 by 3, I would get 9, and then if I multiply 2 by 3, I would get 6. So then I could just take this right up here, And now I've got this nice little graph going ahead and getting started. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to take this graph and we want to turn it into a table. So if we look at the graph, we can see that for every 3 chocolate chips, it would make 2 cookies, which is where this number would be. So what I'm going to do is for every 3 chocolate chips, it would make 2 cookies. Okay, for every 3 chocolate chips, it would make 2 cookies. And then if I follow the graph a little bit longer, it shows me that for 6 chocolate chips, I could have 4 cookies. For 6 chocolate chips, I could have 4 cookies. And then finally what I do is I have 9 chocolate chips, which gives me 6 cookies. Alright, and so if we kept this pattern going on, it would continue to increase at a constant rate, and we would continue to be able to find our points off of the graph that we could put into our table. Okay, so all I want you guys to see from example 2 is that we can take points from a graph and put it into a table to better understand what's going on. So by making the graph, I have 3 points that I put into a table, and these represent the exact same things. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this example because we're going to do one more that ties in everything I've done so far. Alright, so make sure you have all of this down, and what we'll do is we will do one last problem, and then you guys will answer the Google Doc and be done for the night. Alright, so here's our third question, and it says Mr. Paper gets $2 for every cell phone that he takes up. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a table based off of this question, and then we're going to take our information from the table and put it into a graph. So basically I'll just be summing up what I did on number 1 and number 2. Alright, so if we set up this table, we've got our cell phones, we've got how much money I make, and then we've got our rule right below this one. Okay, so go ahead and set up your table just like mine. Alright, and so it says Mr. Paper gets $2 for every cell phone that he takes up. So if I take up 1 cell phone, that would mean that I get $2. And I'm taking that information just straight from the question. And so again, we're talking about additive and multiplicative, so I could either add 1 to that, which would be additive, or I could multiply it by 2. So what I want to go ahead and do is we're going to leave our rule blank for a second so that we can double check what we're doing. And if I took up 2 phones and I got $2 a piece, that would be 2 times 2, which would be 4. So therefore we now know that our rule is going to be times 2. We're going to take the number of phones that I have, that I've taken up, and we're going to multiply it by $2, which would give me the total amount of money that I have. So 2 times $2 would give me $4. Okay, so we could continue this and we could do a couple more examples. Let's see. Let's say I took up 6 cell phones. Well, if my rule is times 2, 6 times 2 is going to give me 12, so I'd make $12 that day. And then let's say that my 7th and 8th period decides to be a little wild and they're all on their phones and we have 15 people get theirs taken up. Well, then I can multiply 15 times the $2, which would give me 30 again. Alright, so what I want to do now is I want to take this data from the table and put it into a graph, and that way we can just reinforce that this really does have the same effects. Alright guys, so over to here on the bottom or wherever you feel is the best spot, I want you to go ahead and draw our graph. Okay, and I'm going to decide my numbers based off what I have over here. And just a refresher, this is our x-axis, and up here is our y-axis. The way I told my students was the y, if you make a capital Y, the y goes up just like the actual y-axis does right there. I'm sure that Mr. Nelson and Mrs. Sorrell have also showed you guys some interesting ways to remember that. So I'm going to go ahead and put my 0 down here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some markings on it. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and do that real quick. Alright, so here's the numbers I chose to use, and I also put my phones down here because this is the number that can stand alone. This is our independent, and I've got money on the side. So what I'm going to do now is look at my table and move it over to these points. So for 1 phone, I would get $2. For 2 phones, we would get $4. Well, we don't have 3 and 4 or 5 in the table, but I do have 6 to $12. Now, if this is a constant, we could look at it and we could figure out what 3, 4, and 5 would be. Now, What I'm going to do is I'm going to pause it and let you guys think about that for a few minutes, and then when you come back, I'll have the answers revealed for you. So go ahead and pause the video now and see if you can figure out 3, 4, and 5. Alright, so what I do is I took the number of phones and I multiplied it, or I added it to the rule, and so it's 3 times 2, which would give me 6. So if I come back and look at this, 4 times 2 gives me $8, and 5 times 2 would give me $10, keeping this graph at a constant. Alright guys, that's all I got for you today. Make sure you do the Google Doc. Don't aggravate your teachers. Have a wonderful rest of the night, and put any questions that you may have on here so that we can address them tomorrow. Have a wonderful night, and we will see you on Wednesday.